Hi, I'm Dan Q, and you're listening to a podcast that nobody asked for, exclusively about things that only I find interesting. Today, I'll be talking about Argo Wilis and rail transport in Indonesia. As usual, there's a blog post that accompanies this episode. Look around wherever you watch, listen to podcasts to find the link, or look me up at danq.me. Rail transport in Indonesia. So Wikipedia's turning 25 this year, and there's a sort of reading challenge there, encouraging people to read one Wikipedia article a day for 25 consecutive days, and I felt I could do one better than that, so I'm not only randomly choosing an article with the random article button, sometimes with a few clicks in case it's really boring, every day, I am then, if it's an particularly interesting and noteworthy thing I discover, I'm writing a blog post about it and sometimes even recording a podcast episode about it. And that's what you're listening to today. So happy 25th birthday, Wikipedia, and thank you for giving me today's random article, Argo Wilis, which led me to today's topic, rail transport in Indonesia. When I saw the title Argo Wilis, it sounded so unfamiliar to my ears that I momentarily thought I was playing Two of These People Are Lying, Tom Scott and his friends' radio game, where they choose random Wikipedia articles with weird titles, of which one person has read and the others bluff. Anyway, it turns out the Argo Wilis is just a train. Well, I say just a train, but it's a train that took me on a journey, to a rabbit hole of Wikipedia pages, which today I'm going to drag you along to. So the Argo Wilis is a train that goes back and forth upon the southernmost train line connecting Surabaya Gubeng in the east to Bandung in the west of Java, the vastly most populous island of the Indonesian archipelago. It goes most of the length of the island. Argo, by the way, means mountain. It's part of a modern collection of Argo network trains that are each named after mountains in the region. Mount Willis, after which the Argo Wilis is named, is a dormant volcano whose magma chamber has the potential for future geothermal power generation. Anyway, learning about the Argo Wilis got me to reading about rail travel in Indonesia in general, because Wikipedia has an article, Rail Transport in Indonesia. There are particular challenges, it seems, to running a train network in a mountainous island nation with a somewhat monsoonal climate. Who knew? Like, here's one. One of the stops on the Argo Wilis' line is, and I apologise that I'm probably about to mangle the pronunciation, Kipiundui, a relatively tiny mountain station that every single passing train stops at in both directions. Why? Well, it's because every train is required to have its brakes tested there before it proceeds down the mountain slopes on either side of it. That rule has existed ever since the railway was first built, which was under Dutch East Indies rule over a century ago, and it's been consistently enforced ever since, except for a spell in the early 1990s when the practice was stopped until a head-on crash a few years later near this station acted as a reminder of the importance of the checks, at which point they were reinstated. Anyway, here are some things I learned about Indonesia's railways while I was exploring Wikipedia. Number 1, trains drive on the right. So, like many island nations, and in common with some non-island nations, mostly those that were part of the British Empire, like many island nations, Indonesian cars drive on the left. But unusually, their railways don't follow the same pattern. On twin-track rail, Indonesian trains typically travel on the right. You see, the Dutch colonists who originally built the railways were already running their railways on the right, and they brought that tradition with them. But the Netherlands didn't switch to right-hand driving for their cars until 1906, except, and this is fun all by itself, in Rotterdam. Rotterdam didn't impose a fixed rule about which side of the road you should drive on until 1917. In any case, when the Dutch switched which side of the road they drove on, they only dragged some of their colonies along for the ride. Number 2, train classes. Not sufficing to just have first and second class travel like we do here in the UK, Indonesian trains are broken down into at least 4 classes: luxury, executive, business and economy, plus a further 2 categories for tourist-centric trains, imperial and priority, and plus some other subclasses that seem to be line-specific. This is one of those moments where I considered looking outside of Wikipedia to try to find answers to the questions, but that didn't really seem in the spirit of this particular challenge. Number 3, it's mostly diesel locomotives. Jakarta has got an electrified metro system, but most of the Indonesian rail network is powered by diesel. However, there are a handful of industrial narrow-gauge mountain railways that still use steam locomotives from time to time for farming or mining purposes. I found a photo in Wikimedia Commons taken in 2003 of a steam locomotive hauling sugarcane. Jakarta was supposed to be getting an electrified monorail, but the project stalled in 2008, and they're in the process now of demolishing the infrastructure they'd already built. Number 4. Lebong Tandai is a special case. There's this remote mountain village in Indonesia called Lebong Tandai, and it's only reliably connected to the rest of the world by a mountain railway line. Apparently the roads are unreliable, frequently covered by mudslides and generally in bad condition. So there's this little mountain railway line. Much of the narrow gauge track is 2 rails connected by a plateway rather than by sleepers, and residents operate their own tiny motorised locomotives independently of the rest of the railway network to get up and down. There's a fantastic photo, which you can find if you jump to the blog post associated with this episode, of a Molak motor on the remote line to Lebong Tandai, constructed out of the remains of a goods vehicle that was written off after an accident. Anyway, that's the interesting things I learned on today's Wikipedia dive. I wonder what I'll learn tomorrow. If it's as interesting as this, I'll let you know. Once again, this episode has a corresponding blog post which you can find at danq.me. If you enjoyed it, go over there and leave me a comment or drop me an email on podcast@danq.me. And as always, Dan Q for listening. Dan Q very much.